Welcome to video 6 of chapter 10, where we will look at a couple of attachment disorders. And the first is reactive attachment disorder, or RAD, where the child is not able to form any attachment, is withdrawn from caregivers, and shows disturbance in both social and emotional functioning. Rather than going further into it myself, I'm going to show you a short 4-minute video that talks about one case of reactive attachment disorder, and it'll give you a pretty good picture of what it's like and what the symptoms are. So take a look at this video. Okay, I'm getting there. Here we go.
A county family has been living through a nightmare for 5 years. It's a child-raising scenario so disturbing and so challenging, they decided to share their story to help others.
And what we've learned is there are many others with the same problem. John Hollenhorst is here with the story.
Well, it took Jay and Jody Bean years to figure out why their new daughter brought anger and fear into the family and triggered maternal hate instead of love. Jody has written a book to help others who may unknowingly be struggling with a rare condition called RAD. The emotional puzzle began 5 years ago. That's when Jay and Jody Bean welcomed 4-year-old Victoria into their family, adopted from an orphanage in Belarus.
As far as her emotional needs, I honestly thought I just had to bring her here and give this girl all the love that she never had.
The orphanage seemed nice, but it wasn't long before they knew something horrible was wrong.
She was lying and she was sneaky and she was destructive. She would break her toys, she would rip her clothes, pull her hair out, she'll bite on her lips till they bleed.
She even threatened in detail how she would kill her new mom. Would she hit you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Bite, spit.
After raising 3 boys, Jody considered herself a nurturing parent, but she just couldn't break through to Victoria.
Her emotions have been so shut down that the only emotions that I knew that she knew for sure was anger and fear.
How are you feeling?
Scared.
Through 5 years of therapy, some on horseback, Jody finally fit the pieces of the puzzle together. The key was those first 4 years in the orphanage.
She never had a consistent caregiver. She didn't believe that her needs were going to be met. She literally thought she was going to die. There's no doubt. I have no doubts of that.
It's a rare psychiatric diagnosis, reactive attachment disorder.
These are kids who biologically are feeling stressed all the time.
Doug Goldsmith of the Children's Center says RAD kids actually endure chemical changes and physical damage to the brain. It happens in their first couple of years when there's a shifting succession of caregivers and the kids form no parental bond.
And they don't go seek out mom. In fact, they don't even look up when they're cut and they're hurt because they've learned that there's no reason to go to adults for care.
In the U.S., they're sometimes born to drug-addicted parents, but families adopting internationally are at especially high risk if the kids are older than perhaps 2 or 3.
Most of these kids we're talking about are being raised in institutions outside the U.S.
There's often a tragic undercurrent of abuse and neglect in the orphanage.
So I have to think that there was definitely trauma, some intense trauma there.
Goldsmith says many dubious treatments have been promoted, none proven scientifically, some outright dangerous, but professional psychologists are beginning to come to grips with it.
We've seen many, many, many wonderful successes. The earlier we treat it, the better off we are.
For Jody and Victoria, love slowly arrived through counseling, horse therapy, and intensely focused, highly structured parenting.
In the beginning, obviously, for the first 3 years, it was hard to love anything about her. But now I honestly can say I love everything about her because I've seen who she is.
Jody Bean is self-publishing her book called Love Lessons, and she has a website to help other families. We have links to that and other RAD resources at ksl.com.
It's a powerful story, John. Thanks.
Yeah, great story.
Okay, so there you got to see an example reactive attachment disorder, and it typically, in most cases, it typically develops after a child has had very, poor and um, unattended to early start in life. For instance, being in a poor orphanage situation and not having one standard caregiver, so they don't develop that mental model of what attachment is. A second disorder is disinhibited social engagement disorder, where the child is indiscriminate in whom he goes to, does not seem to have any special relationship with the caregiver, and behavior is the same whether he's interacting with a stranger or someone he knows well. And I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about the biology of attachment and the hormones oxytocin and vasopressin, and the fact that the hormone systems that produce oxytocin and vasopressin can be really messed up early in life under harsh conditions in the first couple of years of life. And so this disorder of disinhibited social engagement disorder tends to come about when those hormone systems are not functioning properly. And remember, the vasopressin allows you to recognize people as familiar, and if you don't have proper production of that hormone, then you will just turn to a stranger as easily as to your mother or father or caregiver. Okay, so this comes about because of improper functioning hormone system. So as far as prevention and treatment, both of those disorders are very difficult to treat, typically taking years of therapy. And even then, it may not always be successful. As the video said there, it's more success if you start earlier in life. So really, the most effective therapy is not letting those disorders develop in the first place. And so, as it mentions here, one of the strategies is to identify at-risk infants, and to try to intervene to prevent attachment problems. So when I say about at-risk infants, I'm talking about infants that have adolescent mothers, particularly single adolescent mothers. Attachment problems are more likely in those situations. Parents that have drug or alcohol abuse problems often run into attachment issues. So there are certain categories that you can kind of target as a social agency to try to intervene, and as it says here, just really try to it's about educating the parents and trying to develop them to have sensitive caretaking skills for their infants, because that's really all that attachment takes is sensitive caretaking. You don't have to have a lot of special knowledge. You just need to be there for your infant when they need you. Obviously, that's not always possible in cases of adoption from, poor orphanages and things like that. When both parents can be involved, if there are two parents, the therapy certainly has a greater effect. Anyways, just to finish up, for adopted children with attachment disorders, as it says here, it is important for a family to know that much hard work will be needed to try to reverse a child's earlier experiences. The longer that a child spent in poor conditions without a constant caregiver, the longer it's going to take to treat that child. And so, something like, a couple of, if a child spends the first 2 years in poor circumstances, I mean, that is a lot of damage. Even the first year of life spent in poor orphanage conditions will cause significant damage. If it's longer than that, the damage, it's that much harder to fix. Anyways, so these are very serious disorders, and it's something for parents to be aware of when they are adopting children from overseas. Okay, and that will conclude chapter 10 on emotional development and attachment. And have a great day.